This is the Get Real Clinic podcast with Dr. Masterson.
Welcome to the Get Real Clinic podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. We understand that in order to get really great outcomes, really great results, we've got to be able to get real in clinic. And what I mean by that is dealing and interacting and having relationships with other people while we deliver care to people. And today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, drama at work. Why do we find ourselves consistently in the same patterns of behavior? The reason for that is we typically find ourselves in patterns of behavior that we've learned long ago. And we all come into work as human beings modeling the same relationship styles we've always seen. So I'm going to talk to you about something called the drama triangle today. There was a very well-known psychologist back in the 60s named Stephen Karpman who coined this idea called the drama triangle. And what it looks like is each of us takes on a personality or a persona in times of difficulty or stress or conflict. It's either the victim, the villain, or the hero. What those look like specifically, I'll take some time to break down in each category for providers and staff. But what I want you to understand before we even start this discussion is this is a personal journey in development. Obviously, it works best if everyone on the team is engaged. But I can promise you this, if you personally, especially if you're in a leadership role or a significant role of any kind, will start to work your way through these ideas and get out of these bad habits that lead to drama that we all can identify, the team will follow. Your leadership will follow. And a lot of times in healthcare, I hear the same phrase, which is, why would I even try to get better or change because no one above me, no corporate board or leader or CEO is going to care? That doesn't change the opportunity that you have in front of you as an individual to improve your ability to deal with people. If you get better, it is impossible for your life not to get better and the people around you not to get better. Even if it's in your little teeny team at work, whether you work for a large corporate healthcare system or a little small private clinic, I hope that you at least lean into this, because not only will your relationships at work get better, but your marriage will get better, your relationships with your kids will get better, all human-to-human interactions. So let's dive in. Okay, providers, doctors, surgeons, here are the pain points that you would hear when dealing with the drama triangle. We probably can all identify drama, but here's what I want you to lean into. It's going to be phrases like, I find out when tension arises weeks after it's been brewing, or I try to address an issue, but it just feels like it creates more conflict. So I've learned to just back off because when I have difficult conversations, people are just more mad. The team avoids hard conversations because then resentment starts to build up. Or I feel like I have to carry all the emotional weight of the team, or I'm totally absent from the team because no matter what I do, it just always devolves into drama. So how and what does the drama triangle look like for providers? Well, typically there are three roles. Again, like we talked about, the victim, the villain, and the hero. The victim in the provider role is typically, I don't have time for that. You have no idea what's on my plate. I've got surgery I got to handle. I've got patient charts I have to finalize. I've got these MIPS criteria I have to meet. The MA, the RN, the nurse, they can take care of that. I've got bigger fish to fry, right? The villain is the one who typically criticizes everyone. No one's ever going to figure it out. No one's ever going to get it, right? I've explained this concept 15 times and no one can wrap their mind around it. I don't understand why this is so hard. We got to get somebody else in here. We've got to find a different option. We got to get somebody else on the front desk. We got to get somebody else in the back office. The billing team's never going to get it, right? And the final one is the hero. I don't have time to explain it again. I'm just going to do it myself. The billing department's off, the AR is getting too high. Let me just dig into it myself and figure out what the problem is. Maybe the clinical outcomes aren't where they need to be, or the charting isn't where it needs to be, or something's going on with the mid-level providers, or I'll just dive in and figure it out myself. I'm not going to invite anybody else in that dialogue. It's just going to be me. I have to be the one that fixes it. And as you can see, I'm sure you can identify with one of those probably more than the other, but all of us take on one of those roles every time. And that's not only true at work, it's true in all relationships. So if you're in a married, committed relationship, or in a romantic relationship, or even have children, you think about the last conflict you had, right? Typically in those moments, even throughout the dialogue, typically someone is acting as the villain, right? You never blank, or you always blank. And the person receiving that sometimes acts like the victim. Well, you don't understand the stress I'm under. You don't understand the things I have to do, right? Or somebody's the hero, like, well, let me come in and just, let me fix this for you. And we find ourselves going around and around in these same routines and not understanding what always leads to the same psychological and emotional and workforce outcomes and relational outcomes for that matter. So what do we do? What do we do about it? Well, we've got to move from reactive to intentional. And here's what that looks like for every role. So if you ask yourself the question, am I rescuing? Am I blaming? Am I avoiding? Am I pulling back? Am I finding myself identifying with one of the personalities or personas in the triangle? Let's try to get out of it. So if you find yourself being the victim, I've got so much on my plate, I don't have time for that. Or, hey, Dr. So-and-so, can you really help me just look at this? It keeps causing us problems. Like every time I try to check a patient in, or every time I try to build this code, or whatever it is, I don't have time for that. Let so-and-so handle that, right? I can move from victim to learner. I don't have to change perspectives. I don't have to try to convince someone else of my perspective, but I can be curious. And a lot of times you'd be surprised as what a little bit of education or perspective gaining will do to you personally. Why do you feel that way? Or tell me a little bit more about that. It may sound intuitive, but if you have an attitude of I'm overwhelmed, I don't have time for that, you're going to miss the opportunity to understand something that potentially could increase the bottom line or improve a staff relationship more than you know. The next is the villain. Nobody ever gets it, right? How can you move from villain to coach? If you think about a coach on the sideline of a professional sporting event or even a college football or high school football game, they're engaged. They're not missing the opportunity to give feedback. And it's not about the individual, it's about the individual's performance. The villain looks at people as finite. Your performance is your performance and it's never going to get better. The coach looks at people with possibilities. Okay, you keep messing this up, or you've made a few mistakes, but let's dial it in here a little bit so that we can see a better outcome. Or I'm going to believe the best in you so you can get better. Again, not trying to change their perspective, but trying to change your perspective toward them. And finally, moving from that mentality of, I just got to do it all myself, the hero, to more of the detective. Okay, why is it this keeps happening? Why is it that we keep making the same mistake over and over? I can remember in our clinic, when we introduced allergy testing and immunotherapy to our clinic several years ago, we started to do allergy tests in a very, very specific way. Well, we opened up our 4th location, and somehow in the communication of opening that, we were doing allergy tests and the interpretation of positive got miscommunicated between 2 people. And once we saw the rate of positive tests declining, instead of blaming or saying, Susie, what's it? She doesn't even know how to do allergy tests, so she's obviously the problem. We asked questions. Instead of just going, I'm going to go in there and send my best allergy nurse in there to fix it all, we started asking a question. What we saw was one singular communication changed an entire outcome of allergy tests. So we had to make the change. And if we would have just fixed it and not tried to understand, we would have never made a bigger impact in the clinic itself. So once you start to walk through that stuff and try to become a different person or a different persona and try to break out of the cycle for you psychologically, you're going to see changes. But before we start to look into, what are the changes that I'm looking for positivity, I want you to really grab onto this point and don't miss it. The goal here is to improve you as it relates to the drama triangle. Fully understanding that the person that you're involved with or engaged with in conversation, dialogue, work, whatever, may not be doing the same thing. Let me give you a beautiful example. There are systems and processes at work, maybe in the hospital system, and it's just not working for patient care. You can become disenfranchised and say, I don't even want to say anything because nothing's going to matter. I'm not even going to bring it up because if I bring it up, nobody's going to do anything different. Don't find yourself in that position. Keep mentioning, keep trying to get out of the triangle, getting out of the cycle until something gets better. And even understanding that it may not get better. If one person starts to improve themselves personally, that will metastasize. That will spread. Just like negativity, one bad apple will spoil the bunch. One person that's committed to improving themselves psychologically will improve everyone around them. And it's so easy in healthcare to get just absolutely dismayed and burn out because we just think the more I say, nothing happens. Don't find yourself in that situation. Work on you with the understanding that if you work on you, you're going to see improvement, maybe not at work, but definitely in other relationships, because you're going to be able to take the emotional identification of, you know what, I'm acting kind of like the victim right now. Let me get a little more curious. I'm acting like the villain right now. Let me coach a little bit here. I'm acting more like the hero. Maybe I need to just kind of understand what's going on. So what are the signs if you start to break out of the cycle it look like? Let me tell you. You start to feel calm in situations of urgency. Well, we're going to figure it out. We're going to get through it. My emotions are not going to affect the outcome here. You start to assume responsibility, and this is the biggest one. When you hear an outcome, instead of immediately blaming someone else, you're saying, okay, what did I say or communicate that didn't make it make sense? You start to coach instead of criticize. You're open to ideas and learning from everyone. Questions don't upset you. If I hear that question one more time, that's not a part of your psychology. You're starting to grab hold of those thoughts and say, I'm really glad I got that question. And you make space for others to grow. If you do this, it will affect those around you. Even if you have the belief right now, there's no point in doing this because it's not going to change anything. Here's one thing it will change. It'll change you. And if you get better, everyone else will too. Thanks for joining. I hope you engage with the community. I hope you start to share your stories with our clinic on socials or through our different platforms. If you like the podcast, please 100% share it with your friends and family. We try to release this on the second Friday of every month. Make sure you like it. Make sure you subscribe. And please, 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 please give us a review because it definitely helps us in the ratings. Appreciate you guys. And I hope you have a great rest of the week.